Hello, and welcome to RED6545, Learning Disciplinary Literacy Through Vocabulary and Word Study. I'm Dr. Danielle Dennis, and I'll be your instructor for this course. One thing I do have to warn you of is that every time I put together a presentation for a class, my dogs decide it's the right time to start barking. And I don't think today's going to be any different, because while they were fast asleep the entire day when I was reading and putting my thoughts together, they just woke up and started playing in the room next to where I am. So if you hear some barks, that's why. It's very normal. So I'm going to go over with you today the readings and assignments for Module 1 of the Vocabulary and Word Study course. So if you have questions after this, I leave my email address at the end, and there we go. And we can talk about it via email. So these are the three textbooks that are required for the class: Bringing Words to Life, Words Their Way, and Vocabulary Their Way. Words Their Way and Vocabulary Their Way, as you can probably tell just by how they look, have the same author team, or many of the same authors. It's just that Words Their Way really starts to look at spelling development, word knowledge as children in the emergent stages, and then through elementary and early middle school. And Vocabulary Their Way focuses more on teaching vocabulary in middle and high school. While I do recognize that each of you probably has your own grade level or grade levels that you're interested in, this particular degree and this course are focused on supporting your understanding of literacy learning across the K-12 spectrum. So that's why we're going to spend time on both. Bringing Words to Life, you're going to read Chapter 1. This is really introducing you to robust vocabulary instruction. In Words Their Way, you'll read Chapters 1 and 2. Chapter 1 focuses more on the theory of orthographic knowledge, and Chapter 2 looks at assessment of orthographic knowledge, which we'll actually get into a little bit more as we move into the class, but this will give you an overview. And then in Vocabulary Their Way, again, it's Chapter 1, and in that case, it's looking at the theory and the understandings that we have about vocabulary teaching and learning. I did not add any additional articles because although there are times in the semester that you have more chapters to read, I think these are kind of full of information, especially for the first go-around, so I'd rather you really focus on understanding the material here. And we'll add in some other articles to supplement what you're reading later on. So for this module, you only have one assignment, but the assignment is something that you should really be working on throughout the 2 weeks. So your due dates are listed on the syllabus, and all you need to do this time around is your group discussion board and synthesis. What we're doing with this group discussion board is something you will do for each module in the course. So one of the reasons I decided to only keep this one assignment was so you could spend your time, work with your group to really find a way to make this work for all of you, and then you wouldn't also be bogged down by something else. So you should have plenty of time to respond to this group discussion, work through any kinks there might be, any challenges, and be able to get it posted by the due date for this module. So you have small groups that you've been randomly placed in, which you know because you completed the introductory discussion board in your small group. You can reach that by, on the Canvas site, going to People, and then in that space there's a link to Groups, and your group will pop up when you click on that link. So you're going to post individual responses to each of the 4 questions that I've asked on the next slide. Those 4 questions will also be available in the discussion board itself, so you don't have to keep coming back to this presentation. Once everyone in your group has posted their responses, you're going to work as a group to synthesize those responses into one condensed group response that you're then going to share with the entire class. So essentially the idea is that each of you will share your big thinking about all of these readings, all of the chapters I just talked about, in answer to the questions that I'll talk to you through on the next slide. And then as a group, you're going to need to talk through some of those answers. Look at the themes between. What are some common ideas that you had? What are some areas where maybe you don't agree? Or some areas that maybe one of you understood a little bit differently. So the idea here really is that you're conversing with one another and getting a sense of how to create this synthesized response. Now here's the thing, there may be times where a couple of you just don't agree, and I think that's fine. You can write about those caveats in that synthesis. It doesn't have to be one big happy family all the time, but have some conversations around it. You know, make sure that it's not a misunderstanding versus a true disagreement. And then if you do disagree, just share your thoughts on each of those areas. That's definitely fine. The synthesis itself, although it's posted to a discussion board, it can be a PowerPoint, or it could be a Prezi or a blog post, or you can be creative on how to present it. You can also just write it out in narrative form. That's fine as well. But I just want you to know and be thinking about the fact that you can try some different things. It doesn't have to be a narrative. If a PowerPoint makes sense, because then each of you can take a slide or a couple slides or something like that, then that might be something you want to think about. You can also do different things each time, so that will be up to you. Once you've completed that synthesis piece, you're going to post it twice. Once to your small group discussion board and once to the whole class discussion board. I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. One, when we get towards the end of the semester and you need to access some of your thinking, it's easier to go back to the small group board and only have to wade through a few responses than it is to go back to the whole class discussion board and try to get through that. Also, from a grading perspective, I can grade your team from your small group discussion board much easier than I can from the whole group. So that's going to allow me to give you faster and better feedback because I can do it that way. But I do want the whole class to see what you're thinking about, so there will be a discussion board for you to post there as well. So for each module, you're going to have a leader, and the leader's responsibility is really to keep everyone on track, just kind of checking in. Hey, we said we'd have our individual post done by this day. Wanted to see kind of where you're at with that. Work with the group to establish some deadlines. So obviously, if you're going to synthesize everyone's responses, then people need to have their responses in enough time to be able to do that. So you'll need to think about some deadlines. And then give each group member a job for the synthesis. So again, you'll have to decide how it is that you want to present this information. And once you've decided that, who's going to take on what role. Just again, that leader keeps people on track. For this first module, the leader of the group is the person whose last name is first in alphabetical order. So you'll have to look at your last names and make that decision. And then we'll rotate this leader for each module. If you realize that, okay, well, I'm third alphabetically in the group, and that means I'll be responsible for the third module, but I'm going to be away from my computer for a long weekend during that time, and so it's going to be really difficult for me to be the leader, then what I would do is right up front say, I know I'm third, but would the person who's second be willing to change with me? These are going to be your decisions. Just communicate with your group, because those things happen. I mean, you might have a wedding to go to or something along those lines. And that's okay, but just communicate so that you don't fall off and people don't know where you've gone. So for this particular module, these are the 4 questions. One thing I want you to keep in mind is that when I read through the chapters, these are 4 themes that I see across all of the chapters that we read. So while they may appear more obvious in one chapter versus another, there are nuggets of information in each of those chapters that relates back to these questions. So just kind of keep that in mind, do all your readings, and then think about how to respond. So we're thinking about what role does context play in vocabulary acquisition? What does robust vocabulary instruction entail? What are the different types of vocabulary and why does it matter? And what is orthography and why is it important to develop orthographic knowledge? So if any of those words seem a little, unknown to you, it is a vocabulary class, so hopefully you'll be learning more vocabulary as we go. But just know that those pieces will be defined as you start your readings, and they will end up being a major part of what it is that we're learning throughout this semester. So if at any time you have questions, email me, please. I'm really good about responding to email within 24 hours. So if you do not hear back from me in 24 hours, please send the email again. It typically means that either it didn't arrive for some reason or it got buried in my email and I just missed it. So the only exception to that would be if I'm going to be away for a weekend or something, but I'll let you know that in advance so that you know that it may take me a little longer to get back to you. But again, if you do email me and it takes me more than 24 hours, do not hesitate to email again. I do not get offended. I appreciate it. So thank you very much, and I look forward to working with you this semester.